sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came in to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Bittt.Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. How's everyone doing tonight? Hope you're all well. Everyone watching us on YouTube Live, on Facebook Live, and on Twitter Live. Hello, good evening. How are you? How's everyone doing? There's a lot going on. We're going to talk Montreal Canadiens. Sean Monahan was signed to a one-year contract extension earlier this morning at around 9 a.m. Who thought that was going to happen? I did. Does that mean that we can forget about Pierre-Luc Dubois? Well, or does that mean that it might be a little bit more difficult than some people may hope? We're going to get to it because if all goes well, we're also going to go to Murat Ates, who works for The Athletic and covers the National Hockey League. And he's all over this story with the Winnipeg Jets, and we're going to discuss it with Murat. But the Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. Also brought to you in part by Playground, your premier gaming destination. Playground Summer Million is the must-play poker event of the season, featuring 10 championship ring events, $1 million in guaranteed prize money, and a $500,000 guaranteed main event located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground, and brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, recently named by Deloitte and CIBC as one of Canada's best managed companies, the country's leading business award, recognizing innovative and world-class companies. The best managed Canadian companies designation fuels Energy's purpose of creating progress for their customers, their employees, and their communities. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. Well, throughout the entire hockey season, he joined me as a collaborator for the most part on Wednesday nights. But come summertime, he's got, he actually worked the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, had the final off. So he's been on summer vacation now for a couple of weeks. But I'm going to bother him. Why? Because he covers the Montreal Canadiens. He covered Sean Monahan. He was at every practice. He was at every game. And I know he's going to have a great opinion on this one. From TVA Sport, Marc-André Perreault. Comment vas-tu, Nadja? Regarde de quoi?
Look at the tanning. Hey? V-neck, tanned. I mean, living the dream, my friend. Yeah.
V-neck.
How are you?
The white V-neck. You got the hair going up too? Look at that.
Pale blue. Yeah, well, I need an haircut, but yeah, I tried the most I could, but that's the result.
You gotta, when you need to cut give it the wet look. If you give it the wet look, go down a little bit.
I don't have the thickness that you have, so that's why.
I was looking for the spray bottle. I have it here somewhere.
I take it easy on the water, but yeah, life is great. I'm having a great time with the kids. And
good.
Yeah, life.
I'm happy to hear it, my man. I'm happy to hear it.
Thanks for having me, though.
You're very welcome. I thank you for doing it, and I missed you too. Life is good for Sean Monahan and his as well, I would imagine, because earlier this morning at 9 a.m., here's a press release that went, here's a tweet. The Canadiens have agreed to terms on a one-year contract extension, 2023-2024, with forward Sean Monahan. At 9 a.m., that's when they sent out their tweets, by the way. The Caulfield contract was sent out at 9 a.m., the Pizzetta contract was sent out at 9 a.m. This is strategic, by the way. So that's when they think most people will see it. And all the radio stations, TV stations, and podcasters will have plenty of time to be able to talk about it. Pretty smart, the Montreal Canadiens. I think it's a pretty smart deal. I think it's a great deal for the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, Sean Monahan is going to have to be healthy. But, Marc-André, we're going to hear from Sean Monahan tomorrow via Zoom call. but Montreal Canadiens aren't signing him if he's not healthy.
Of course he is. I mean, he had his operation, but to me, it's a great signature for the Montreal Canadiens. It's sad for Sean Monahan because he is losing so much money for playing on that injured ankle. And looking back, it was such a bad decision. He knows it. Everybody knows it. And probably it didn't help the case of, the medical staff that got fired by Montreal Canadiens. Because I remember, I think it was December 3rd or 1st, we were in Calgary.
Yeah.
And it's the morning skate. And we talked to a few guys in the Calgary dressing room, and Milan Lucic is like, he's a tough guy. He's never complaining. He's playing through injury and he's such a warrior and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So comes the game, and then Sean Monahan walks in the arena with his walking boot, like the protection boot.
Yeah.
And we're all like, what is, he's not gonna play, obviously. Guess what? He's on the ice, plays well, they win the game. But after that, how do you say that in English? Quand tu compenses, you're injured somewhere, so you compensate.
He was compensating, yeah.
He was compensating, and so the groin got injured. So anyway,
you too will be compensated at the end of the podcast, by the way, but in a different form that Sean Monahan was compensated.
Oh, yeah, well,
it carries different definitions,
Well, same amount, just the U.S. and Canadian dollars, right?
Yeah. No, I get that. Yes, of course.
But seriously, I think this guy, because he was having a great season, like 17 points, 25 games. He was such a great addition. It was a steal. Like, it was a magic trick from Kent Hughes. And he could have earned so much more money if he would have stayed healthy or whatever. But anyways, he's only 28 years old. So that's the good news. If he can stay healthy, and that's the gamble of Kent Hughes, that he is going to stay healthy.
Yeah.
So, but for like $2 million, if he plays 26 games, he's going to have a $15,000 signing bonus. It's a great signature because you're taking pressure off Suzuki's shoulder. And we saw that, at the beginning of the year, it was obvious that it was helping Nick Suzuki, just the fact that Sean Monahan was there. So a great signature. I mean, $2 million, it's like peanuts in the hockey world.
Yeah.
And the guy,
it was if I can, it was to refresh everyone's memories, Marc-André, it was 10 months ago, give or take, that Kent Hughes acquired Sean Monahan from the Calgary Flames, along with a conditional first-round pick in 2025 for future considerations, right? And you're right. He had 17 points in 25 games, and his line mates, whoever was playing with him, loved playing with him. They loved playing with him.
He's a great guy. He not only a great player, he's a great guy. He's loved in the dressing room. He loved Montreal. He said at the end of the year that he wanted to be back if it was possible. Mm-hmm. So he could have gone to the 1st of July, but I think he gambled on himself. He has a lot to prove. You just have to prove that he can stay healthy. And after that, he's going to be 29. So he still have time to sign a big contract. So guess what? He's going to give it all this year again. So that's the good news. So we'll see. But to me, I wouldn't say it's a magic trick again, because who knows? But Sean Monahan, $2 million, it's a great deal.
Think about this for a second, Marc-André. Sean Monahan this past season played 25 games, a shortened season due to that injury. Of course, you talked about the ankle, then compensating, turned out to be a groin injury after that. He had a couple of injuries, only 25 games. The year before that, 65 games. The year before that, 50 games. The year before
Ankles.
that, 70 games. The year before that, hip injury, yes. Both hips, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
So 25 games, 65 games, 50 games, 70 games, 78 games, 74 games. The last time he played a full 82-game season was back in 2016, 2017. So he has been plagued by injuries, no doubt about it. He was going to be a restricted free agent this summer at 28 years of age. He would have loved to have cashed in on a 5 or a 6-year deal somewhere else, which probably would have been his last or maybe second last contract, would have been his opportunity to really cash in. But because of the injuries, he knows that if he goes to market, No one's going to offer him more than a 1-year deal. He's going to have to prove himself. So he says, if I have to go somewhere else to prove myself, I might as well stay in Montreal, where I like the city, I like the team, I like the organization, I like my teammates, I like my line mates. I think I can put up points. I did last season. Let me just stay healthy and do it again.
Yeah, he knows where he fits in the lineup, and he knows he's gonna have good minutes on the power play. It's not everywhere that he can have good minutes on the power play. So he's gonna be on the first power play. He's gonna have good minutes, and he's gonna be a leader. He's gonna prove. And let's say Montreal is like far from the playoffs. The trading deadline. It's got to be time to cash in for Kent Hughes again on Sean Monahan.
Of course.
If he can stay healthy, that's the word, obviously. But I think again, it's a great deal for everyone. I think Monahan would have loved, well, obviously a little bit more money, but I think he's gambling on himself, proving that he can stay healthy, and he could make, and he could have another big contract coming up next season, because his big contract was what, 7 times 7 with Calgary, so he's not poor. 7 times 45 million. So that's
6.5.
That's not bad. Yeah,
I guess.
Anyway,
Listen,
but great guy. He's a
Mapper,
great guy. Great leader.
When they acquired him, it was the two things that we thought about was, okay, so if he works out in Montreal, there's a chance they might be able to bring him back. We hear such good things about him. And if they're out of a playoff spot, they're going to try and get a first-round pick for him. And then the other option, of course, is that maybe you try and trade him at the deadline. But if you did like him and you wanted to trade him anyway because you wanted to get that first-round pick, then you can probably try and reacquire him again before when he hit unrestricted free agency in the summer. But last year, when we saw that he was, at one point he was out with an injury, we didn't know whether or not he was going to be back. We were talking about it, and this was a scenario that we were bringing up. The scenario that, okay, you know what? They probably wanted to trade Monahan. They weren't able to because he was hurt, for the rest of the season. So why don't you find out, make sure he gets a clean bill of health. If he does, sign him to a 1-year deal. You bring him back. He was producing with 17 points in 25 games. Chances are he might even produce even more next year, because now he knows the city, he knows the system, he knows the coach, he knows his teammates, and they're a young team, and they're all going to be better.
It's confirmed that they shopped him. Like they wanted to get something out from him. That's why it was such a secretive thing, the injury, and back on the ice for 2-3 days, and then it was a weird situation. But I think they tried so hard to get something from him, but couldn't make it happen. But now I don't know. I mean, the good news is the hips are not, we're not involved in this medical bill this season. Ankle, it happens. Groin, sometimes, can you fully recover from groin injury? I mean, it's pretty tough, but anyways, let's hope he's healthy, and it's a great addition again, and let's hope that they can get something from him next trade deadline.
Yesterday, I was talking to Eric Engels of Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca, and he said, you can never have too many centermen. There's so many teams that have won the cup in the past that had centermen that ended up playing on the wing. And we saw it, the Toronto had, they didn't win the cup, but Toronto had, they got centermen like Tavares and Austin Matthews and Ryan O'Reilly, that at some point they were playing, Ryan O'Reilly on the wing with Tavares. And you have a certain flexibility. The Bruins, we've seen, they've had so many centermen over the years. Some of them play wing. So when we're
Vegas with Nicolas Roy.
You're right about that. When we were talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois yesterday, Eric says, I'm in favor of it. I believe the Montreal Canadiens will make a trade with Winnipeg. I believe Pierre-Luc Dubois will be a Montreal Canadian, and you're going to have to buy some unrestricted free agency years there. And if he wants $9 million a year, I'd give it to him because the Canadiens are better with him. Okay. Eric's opinion. I said, I'd like him. I take him on my team, but for me, there's some red flags. He wanted out of Columbus. He wanted out of Winnipeg. At times he lacks intensity. There's some things that he did probably weren't the most, bailing it on that shift because he wanted out of Columbus. And all I said was, you have a salary structure. Nick Suzuki is the highest paid. I wouldn't give him more than Nick Suzuki. Okay.
That's
so
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah,
We
so we're
agree.
going back and forth. But he said, yeah, but you know what? You can always use an extra centerman. That was yesterday. Today they signed the guy, re-signed the guy to a 1-year contract extension who can play center and can also be moved to the wing. Sean Monahan. Does this signing at $1.985 million, by the way, if he's healthy and he plays X amount of games, he'll get a bonus and he'll be up to $2 million per season. $15,000 bonus, Pierre LeBrun tells us. Does this signing say to you that you doubt the Canadians are going to trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois?
Well, I mean, I always doubted. I've seen the scenario so many times in the last years that Montreal is the front runner, and but at the end of the day, it's just like used to negotiate. So when it's too obvious, it doesn't happen most of the time. So, but first thing, I wouldn't give him $9 million because again, and it's you have a salary structure and you don't know what's going to be the cap in the next years. I mean, it's going to go up, but guess what? Some players you're gonna have to pay the young defensemen that are coming. So and you can't. You've seen it in Toronto, bringing a guy and give him too much money, and then after you have to sign your big guns, and then Mitch Marner is like, okay, you're giving him that money, I'm gonna take that money. So it's very
yeah, but here for the most part, the big guns are already signed. Suzuki's under contract for the next 7 years. Caulfield for the next 8.
Yeah, but you have a lot of young defensemen that are gonna ask. It's not the same, I know, but still you have a cap to respect, right?
Yeah.
But for the center thing, you've seen Kirby Dach playing center, you've seen him playing wing, so it's such a plus when you can switch centerman to wing and it works. But you could still trade for, like, I don't know, Dvorak, maybe. I don't think he's locked in Montreal. I mean, no matter what. So
no, he's not.
That's a possibility.
Winnipeg's going to have to do a lot better than Dvorak, mind you. They're in a little bit of a pickle, right? Because the player's telling them, "Hey, I want out." The agent's telling them, "I want out." So, all right.
Yeah,
so
the worst is Winnipeg.
I don't think he's using the Canadians for leverage, though, because he's going to end up. It's probably going to end up being a sign and trade, right? So,
I'm not saying that it's always like you have this idea in the back of your mind, but at the end of the day, most often it's what happened at the end of the day. Maybe he doesn't want to use Montreal for leverage, but it is what it is, right?
I hear you, bud. I hear you.
$9 million is a lot of money for a guy who, I mean, he's a great player. I love the guy. He's always been great. He's a very polite kid. He's a good hockey player. But did he prove he deserves $9 million times 8? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's doing good things in the community too, and with the foundation and stuff like that.
Great guy. And don't get me wrong, he's a great guy. And I'm not like trash talking. I'm not saying I mean, things happen in Columbus. He was young, and trust me, I did stupid things when I was young. Trust me on that. Winnipeg, he's not the only one. And from what I've heard in the last years, a lot of people would have wanted out of Winnipeg. So let's just put that in perspective.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So in the end, you're saying when we talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, good player, you take him on your team, but not at any cost. Not at any cost.
8 times 8 tomorrow morning. And I would be willing to give young assets and good picks for him. I would be willing to do that.
8 times 8 tomorrow morning. So you are willing to give him more than Suzuki then?
Well, I mean, 8 times 8, I mean, yes.
Okay, so you won't give him 8 times 9, but 8 times 8 tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think about it. I didn't, calculate everything, but
you're that one team. I said Emositu in French would be maintenant c'est toi. I don't know if that translates like here he is. You know what I mean? It's like here he is. Maintenant c'est toi.
He's a horse. You don't see like you don't have a lot of players like Pierre-Luc Dubois available at this age. So if it costs 8 times 8, I mean, I don't think Suzuki is going to cry over that. I think he's, to me, Caulfield's signature like gave so many good signs about what's happening in Montreal. You know, the management, the coach, everything in this locker room seems to be. It's just a positive vibe.
Yeah. So I was at a I'm going to try and look it up right now. I was at a gala, a function. What was it? It was a gala. It was a gala, probably a little while back, and I ran into a young lady by the name of Alessandra Finocchiaro, and she came over and she said, "I watch your podcast all the time," and she says, "I love when you slide in a couple of Italian words to your collaborators who are francophones, and they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about." And I said, "Which one? Emoji too?" And that's it. It meant not.
Okay, that's why.
All right. Okay. But I want you to say it before. Emoji too. Say it.
Emoji too.
Emoji too. There you have it. You're the best. Look at you like that. You're the best. Hey, thanks for taking time away from the kids and from the summer, even though I don't even think it's officially summer. Is it officially? It's not officially summer yet, is it?
Tomorrow, actually.
Oh, tomorrow, really?
Tomorrow, yeah. Longest day of the year, so just enjoy it, guys.
And I think it's shaping up to be a very nice day tomorrow, right? I think give or take 28, 29, something like that, right?
Every day is a great day.
You're right. That's what my buddy Sammy says back at Master Control. Sammy Cavallaro says every day is a good day. That's what he lives by.
It is.
Thank you, Marc-André.
8 times 8, yes, tomorrow morning.
Emoji too. Ciao. Bye-bye. Bye. 8 times 9, no way. 8 times 8, tomorrow morning. Emoji too. All right, a shout out to Murphy Clinic, an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal Shop Angus, and the second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. As a matter of fact, my wife was there earlier today. She had a treatment done, and she says, Tony, these people are Spack. Spack would mean A-OK, number one. I want to bring up a tweet, an article today in The Athletic. Winnipeg's key considerations as the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade inches nearer with more moves to follow, and an exploration of the multiple options Winnipeg has as it tries to reset its future. We'll find out what it's going to take to acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois and if the Montreal Canadiens are a match. Is Dubois going to get traded to the Canadiens? Murat Ates, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm
good.
Good. That was your article. That was your piece, Murat, of course, with The Athletic, covering the Winnipeg Jets. Murat, this has been, there's been Pierre-Luc Dubois talk here in La Belle Province for the last 6 months, and now it's really intensifying, of course, because a lot of people close to the situation believe that this is coming to an end here sometime soon, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be traded on Wednesday night or Thursday night at the NHL draft. All right, so we know that Dubois was an RFA at the end of this year. We also knew previously that it was his intention not to re-sign in Winnipeg. So some of us assumed that maybe he was going to sign a 1-year deal with the Winnipeg Jets and then not re-sign, and they lose him for nothing. His agent has come out. They've demanded a trade. All right, they've demanded a trade. They want out. And they want to work with the club here to see if they can find, and out of respect for the club too, because instead of the club getting nothing for him and leading them on, they're telling the club, listen, we want out. So how many teams do you think are interested in Pierre-Luc Dubois? What are you hearing?
Well, for that, I go to Marc-Antoine Gaudin and Arpin Basu's report a couple of weeks ago, talking about a list of 5 to 6 teams that Dubois and Pat Brisson, his agent, would be talking with the Winnipeg Jets about and exploring the possibility of a sign-and trade. And I think that that's accurate. I think we've talked about Montreal for so long. Home is dear to Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think Montreal matters a lot to him, whether he ends up being traded there or not. I think that's going to be a really special place for him for the rest of his life. Los Angeles is being discussed as a front runner, and I think rightfully so based on what I'm hearing there. But it's not just there. I think that Dubois is open to the idea of other locations as well. But the way that he's gone about this situation, limiting it to a few teams, he's an RFA, but he's acting as if he has a no trade clause right now. And so the list of teams is probably limited to contenders where he believes he can win. So, I believe LA's a front runner. Montreal's important. But if the Colorado Avalanche were willing to make a short-term play on Pierre-Luc Dubois, wouldn't he want to be a part of that? If Boston realizes that David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron are going to retire tomorrow and are able to negotiate its cap space, perhaps without Jake DeBrusk, perhaps without Jeremy Swayman, maybe there's a fit there. New York, I have the same sort of feeling. Like, there are specific situations where it may be a fit for him, believing he wants to be in a world-class city that can win and win relatively soon and to pay him. But it's still not a full market of teams, and Winnipeg's got a lot of work to do to make sure that they can get the proper value for a player like him.
Murat, in this market, there's many members of the media that are all in right away. Let's go. Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's the entire package. He's going to turn 25 in the summer. He wants to come play for the Montreal Canadiens. He wants to be a Hab. He wants to move to Montreal. He does work here already. He spends his summers here. By all accounts, everything we hear, he's a nice guy. He's a big boy. He's a center. He can play wing. He's versatile. He's put up points in the playoffs for a gazillion reasons. Everyone wants him. More centers, the better. Could you imagine him with Caulfield, or could you imagine him on a line with Suzuki, or could you imagine him on the line with Kirby Dach? I am one, and I have been one since day one, saying very good player. I take him on my team, no doubt about it. But I see red flags. I've seen red flags in the past. I continue to see a couple. I'm a little bit scared. So because of that, I'm not all in, and I'm not in at all costs. You, who's covered him closely here, what can you tell me?
Well, I see that. I see the reasons for caution. Maybe of any team, Montreal might be the one to not necessarily have to be as cautious. If you go back to Columbus and talking to Aaron Portzline, and I've seen him say this in his work as well, I don't think it was a John Tortorella issue. I don't think it was anything as incendiary as that. But it's possible that Pierre-Luc Dubois has been trying to, negotiate his move to a big market, or to Montreal specifically, I should say, for a very long time. That's part of what I have in my mind as possible for what the story is that he simply won't commit to, quite plainly. And if that's the case, then Montreal should have some confidence there. I think predicated on this deal is a sign and trade, and that's what Pat Brisson is working with the team to try to arrange. If you have Pierre-Luc Dubois with 6, 7, 8 years of contract certainty, as opposed to him constantly in this RFA limbo, that he is in right now, I think you can have more confidence as well. I don't think that it's as likely he walks in those types of situations. But I do get it. Until the moment that he delivers an important role for a good team, winning key games, playoff rounds, he's going to be the guy that had the shift in Columbus, and he's going to be the guy that pushed his way out of Winnipeg, and that's his legacy until he overcomes it. And so I understand that perspective. At the same time, I guess covering him, I think that sort of trying to set the goalposts on what he is as a player, I hear some outlandish stuff. I hear that, he's a ghost. And honestly, the performance he delivered this season, 40 games of number one center capability, 25 games, maybe a number 3. And interestingly enough, it started in that game in Montreal, I think was the beginning of his swoon towards the back half of the season. And I know he had some injuries and stuff like that as well, but it was a really major 2-month sort of, this guy isn't really delivering like he should. And he put it together just in time for the end of the regular season, had a big game 1 and Winnipeg's only win against Vegas in the playoffs. And I think if you're getting, at 24 years old, a first-line center with, certainly a quarter of a season, third of a season swoon, and a bit of a good playoff performance, a ghost in Game 5, as all Jets were, I'm projecting a guy who's at least a second-line center and probably flirts more often than not with first-line center contributions. He's just 24, like you said. He's turning 25 right away. I think that's a very good player that should be an asset for any team, as long as he's happy there, as I believe he'd be in Montreal.
It was an early exit for the Jets in the playoffs, but where would he rank in terms of their best performers? Where would you put him?
I mean, big swing in that. Great question. But game one, where it looked like Winnipeg could take it to Vegas. Now, of course, Jack Eichel was first game back in a while. Mark Stone was the same deal. It wasn't the Vegas Golden Knights of the steamroller that we saw. But Pierre-Luc Dubois was one of Winnipeg's best players in that game. He won battles that led to Kyle Connor's, I think it was the game-winning goal. It may have been, he scored another goal right after that as well. I think it was a 2-point night for him, but he was a force all over the ice. And I think that was the guy that a lot of Jets fans wanted to see forever. By game 5, though, a lot of Winnipeg Jets got criticized for not showing up that day. And it was him and his line mate, Kyle Connor. They'd been great together for most of the season. They were caught also on camera for some key Vegas goals early in that game. And of course, throughout the series as well. So middling. He was a big part of the win. He was a big part of the loss as well.
All right. So, but he was not their best performer in the playoffs, in your opinion. I'll tell you why. I'm asking you this in just a second, by the way. If I had to ask you, Murat Ates, one name, who was Winnipeg's best performer in the playoffs in round 1?
Adam Lowry.
Adam Lowry. Who, in your opinion, was number 2?
That's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. Yeah. It was Winnipeg's grind guys who were able to consistently get things going, whereas the skill guys were a little bit overwhelmed by Vegas's top players.
All right. So on your list, Pierre-Luc Dubois was not one of the top 3 Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs in round 1.
I don't think so.
Okay,
no.
Perfect. The reason why I ask is because Jonathan Marchessault was asked about Pierre-Luc Dubois. And he said he thought he was Winnipeg's best player in round 1. And so here in this market, this is like the thing that's being used to try and convince everyone to go after Dubois. Oh, Jonathan Marchessault said he was the best player in round 1. Yes, I understand that. A Quebecer said another Quebecer was the best player in round 1. Yeah, it could be out of loyalty. It could be out of friendship. Or maybe it's true, right? But it could be. But you covered the team. You don't think so. You don't think he was in the top 3. It's an interesting point. It's tough
because Winnipeg's loss was predicated on Mark Scheifele exiting, Josh Morrissey exiting. The team was falling apart injury-wise as well. So there's a little bit of that.
Okay, so now he basically has told them he wants out. He's told them he wants out right away, and he's an RFA who, like you said, is acting like he's UFA eligible, and he's not. Other teams see Winnipeg coming from a mile away. The good news is that Winnipeg can get something for him. If he would have been signed next year and then he would have said, okay, you know what, we'll talk at the end of the year, and then he walks, they get nothing for him. The good news is they'll get something for him. The bad news is that other teams see Kevin Cheveldayoff coming from a mile away. But despite that, you really believe that Cheveldayoff has to hit what? Has to hit a home run with this or what? Or he's in trouble? Or
I don't know about a home run because I think the world, we've set our goalposts based on the idea that everybody sees him coming. Just like you said, I mean, that's a good point. I think that what Cheveldayoff needs to do is return a good young player who can be part of a winning future plus futures. The team's not interested in a pure rebuild. So if it's just prospects, just picks, I don't think Cheveldayoff, that's not the target. And so I look back to his 2 biggest recent trades where he was painted into a corner. And one of them is acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois in the first place for Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. It returned Dubois and a third. Dubois at that time had 1 more year until he needed a new contract. So blah, blah, blah. But Laine, Roslovic, Dubois and a third. And Winnipeg was painted into a corner at that time. I think adding Roslovic to that package, you can argue that that's a fair deal for the Winnipeg Jets. I think that they did well. And that was a situation that Winnipeg was in a tough spot. Before that, Jacob Trouba, everybody knew that he was on his way to the States for forever, right? That was an open secret. He'd held out at one point as well, trying to expedite that process. He played all of his contract situations, looking to get out. And Winnipeg, in that case, returned Neil Pionk and a first-round pick for Jacob Trouba, who then immediately signed a long-term extension with New York. So I think that's comparable here with the sign and trade. In that case, Trouba had just come off a 50-point season, and Pionk was not seen as anywhere near his ability, although Pionk delivered a couple of good seasons before tapering off. Winnipeg got a first-round pick and a player who, if everything broke right, could maybe step into Trouba's role. And I think that's the sort of ballpark I'm thinking about for Pierre-Luc Dubois right now. A young forward who could grow into a top 6 role, maybe is a worse version of a top 6 player than Dubois is right now, with some reasons for growth and then futures. And I think that's where I'm at.
Taking a look at the Montreal Canadiens roster and the depth chart within the entire organization, do you believe the Canadiens have what it takes to satisfy Winnipeg?
If it were easy between Montreal and Winnipeg, it would have been done. That's what I believe. And that's not saying that, Kevin Cheveldayoff has told me that. I'm just thinking based on what we know. I think that if you're the Montreal Canadiens, anyone Winnipeg is reasonably asking you for right now is a player you want to keep. And I think Kirby Dach is the perfect example of that. I think that last season, when Montreal acquired him and before he stepped into the role that he did and showed the growth that he did, when I saw Kirby Dach play for Montreal this season, I believe in that player. I really do.
So do I.
But before that happened, I think he was the perfect example. The right age range, the right yet to break out range, the highly touted, all of those sorts of things. But he hadn't quite done it yet, and he'd fallen out of favor a bit in Chicago. At this stage, if you're Montreal and you're being asked for Kirby Dach, aren't you going to hold on to him? Isn't he too much of a part of your future? And I think anybody above that, come on, Nick Suzuki, you're laughing. Cole, those aren't conversations that are happening. But if you go one step below that, where's that trade going to happen? It's not going to be Josh Anderson and Christian Dvorak and, okay, the cap works, but that's pretty middling value, even compared to probably what some of the other teams are able to offer. That's why I believe that it's not just smoke and mirrors, that Los Angeles probably has better odds than Montreal. They have a few more of those mid-tier young players that they'd be willing to move, more willing to move Gabriel Velarde, I would say, than Montreal should be willing to move Kirby Dach. And that's where the gamesmanship gets into it, and probably why it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, so you talked about Suzuki. No, it won't happen. Caulfield, no, it won't happen. Slavkovsky, no, won't happen. Kirby Dach, no, won't happen. And the 5th pick in the draft is, most likely going to be a first pairing defenseman, or at the very worst, a second liner in the National Hockey League, but will give you a lot of cap flexibility because they're going to be on an entry-level contract for the first 3 years. And so that's not going to happen either. So I understand what you're saying here. So in your opinion, Montreal, they don't have what it takes, because what Winnipeg would want, Montreal would want to keep. And if you look into that second tier, not good enough for Pierre-Luc. You're thinking Los Angeles?
That's who I'm thinking about right now. Yeah, that's the team. To me, I can make the case for them wanting the player. I believe they have interest in the player. I believe that they're, I'm a little bit more familiar as well with their prospects and depth. And I think that they've got a perfect situation of Velarde as an RFA this summer. Kopitar's money likely coming off the books next year. He's still an amazing player, Kopitar, but I don't think he's a 10 million player anymore. So there's the thought that may open up for Los Angeles, even though there is some cap work to do on that front too.
Yeah.
I just think they have the volume of pieces.
I got something for you, by the way. In 2016, the NHL entry draft, the Montreal Canadiens had the 9th pick in the draft. All right. They desperately wanted to move up because they wanted to draft Pierre-Luc Dubois. Marc Bergevin was the president of the Pierre-Luc Dubois fan club, so we hear. Matthews went 1, Laine went 2. The Canadiens, a couple of days after that draft, 4 or 5 days later, traded PK Subban to the Nashville Predators for Shea Weber. They dangled Subban at the draft and tried to pull off a trade with the Edmonton Oilers and get the Oilers' 4th pick overall in the draft, because they thought with that 4th pick, they were going to draft Dubois. Columbus changed everything because they drafted Pierre-Luc Dubois at 3. That trade fell apart, maybe for that reason or another reason. And, the Canadiens were never able to get Pierre-Luc Dubois. And then Aaron Portzline added on to that, told us, and I had a chance to speak to him as well. And he said that, there was a chance the Canadiens were going to offer Sheet Dubois when he was in Columbus. Kekalainen moved a couple of players to get himself some flexibility so that he can match any offer. And when it appeared that Columbus was not going to trade him per his request, that's when he had that famous shift where he mailed it in. So all's to say, the reason why I'm bringing this up, when you say Los Angeles, Marc Bergevin is a right-hand man to Rob Blake and the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, he's a big-time fan of Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I think that tracks, and that's a tremendous story on that trade as well that didn't go through. I think these are the sorts of things you hear in the NHL where when players get coveted for a long period of time, and I mean, Dubois delivered for his draft slot. Like, look at the production that he's come up with. And certainly Puljujarvi's, I mean, he's on his own journey in terms of his NHL career.
Yeah.
But that was a game changer, that draft selection, for so many different reasons. I like that link. I like that as one of the reasons to think LA should be interested. For sure, I do. Appreciate
it. So if you ever bring it up in the Athletic, Tony Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Hey, Murat. Thank you so much. Fantastic contributions. I love the article earlier today. The second I read it, I said, Murat is coming on the Sick Podcast tonight. I'm glad you accepted the invitation, my man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right. There you have it. Murat Ates of The Athletic. Follow him. A quick shout out I'd like to give to my buddies Charlie and Sam over at Optimal Stretch Clinic. And I have something here. Fascial stretch therapy. This is what they do. They also do massage and acupuncture. They can basically make you unlock your full physical potential through this fascial stretch therapy. And the reason why I bring them up is there aren't too many people in Canada that are specialized in this, but Charlie and Sam are. They basically have a one-stop shop, optimalstretchclinic.com. Check them out. You can check them out on their website, and they're open 7 days a week. And to book your first appointment and experience the benefits of fascial stretching, I feel like an 18-year-old kid. I'm telling you, I'm swinging off chandeliers and everything like that. Oops, that's another story for another day. Hey, thanks everyone for watching. Once again, the Sick Podcast live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you like it, share it with your friends. Comment Sick right now. SICK, SICK, SICK. And if you're going to listen to us on Google, Apple, or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. For our proud sponsors, partners who bring you the Sick Podcast, they are Energy Transportation Group. They are Playground. They are La Bittt at Tibi. And merci, Murphy Clinic as well. And to all of you, Franiello and Sammy at Master Control, they're Cavallaro. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBeat.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.